Hey, Paulies Sleepers fans, how you doing? We're back. We're going to do a special video today. Out of the blue. I didn't even tell you it was coming. But hey, 2018, I don't think it's too early to start thinking about fantasy football. For me, it's never too early to start thinking about it, especially now that the Combine's behind us and the major early free agency signings are behind us. So I want to take a look today at the NFC to see what teams have done through free agency losses and acquisitions that could make their teams, more or less fantasy relevant, and what they may want to do or need to do in the draft to help that out. Just kind of a preview here. I want to do one today of the NFC, follow up here in a week or so with one of the AFC, and then we'll do a few more, obviously after the draft, and kind of tighten it down going into next year. And another reason why I want to do this is thought about this towards the end of last year a bunch, and this year we're going to introduce season-long content as well as the DraftKings advice. So we're going to try and get you some trophies this year too. This year isn't just going to be about DraftKings. It's about fantasy football, your season-long leagues, who are you going to want to draft in those leagues to get you a trophy. Speaking of trophies, league of record that I talked about last year, went ahead and brought home the trophy. Drafted Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara, and they got me there. So let me help you get some of these trophies here on your mantles. Pockets full of money, that's what we're going for. And just bragging rights, really. To me, the handing over of the trophy was much bigger than the handing over of the envelope, although that wasn't overlooked. A pocket full of cash is nice too. So what we're looking at is new offensive coordinator moves that can make some difference here this year. We're going to do some free agent grades. We're going to look at a few players that need some more looks, more coach. Come on here with these guys. These guys are great fantasy players, and they get it done, and then you just feel like the coach is holding them back. So one of the guys is Tariq Cohen, and I think with Matt Nagy now and with the Bears, I think that's going to help. Chris Thompson with the Redskins, I think they would have to think they need to use him more this year. With Alex Smith, might want to pass him the ball a bunch. Marlon Mack with the Colts, who they just would not give him the ball last year, 4, 5, 6 touches a game. I'd love to see him get 10 plus and see what's going on there. And then this is a funny one, but more touches for Alvin Kamara. Come on, Sean Payton. He loves this guy. We love him here at Paulies Sleepers. He was getting 13, 14, 15 touches a game. I'd love to see that go up to like 18 touches a game. I mean, an extra 3 touches. An extra 50 touches on the season at his rate is just going to take him to the next stratosphere. So some guys real quick there that we want to look at that could be beneficial to get some more looks. And then we want to see where these rookies are going. There's some rookie wide receivers and running backs I want to talk about today, and a little bit of quarterback action. And that could, we want to keep an eye on these guys that they could be fantasy relevant this year too. So we're going to do a team-by-team breakdown here of the NFC, starting with the Arizona Cardinals. I think there might be a regression coming here. David Johnson might need some time to get back. Mike McCoy is their new offensive coordinator from the Broncos. That doesn't excite me. That might be good for David Johnson once he gets going, because he's going to want to grind it out. So obviously he's always fantasy relevant. But just the team as a whole, I'm not too excited about. Sam Bradford is their new quarterback. Got him from the Vikings in the free agency, and he dinks and dunks. They lost Jaron Brown. They lost John Brown. So you've got Fitz and DJ and Sam Bradford right now, I think, are the most, relevant pieces. I really think that they need to draft some wide receivers to bolster that depth behind Fitz, and maybe somebody that can, quickly take over Fitz's role. And thanks, Fitz, for not leaving, because they don't have a #1 wide receiver to take your place. You know, it's going to be exciting to see what he does. But on the whole, I think they're going to regress from a fantasy standpoint just because of Mike McCoy and Sam Bradford. They did get Justin Pugh from the Giants. That's a plus for the running game, offensive guard. Injury history, though, big time. He hasn't played a complete season since 2013. So if he stays healthy, that could be big. Also, Andre Smith from the Bengals. Some injury concerns there, too, but I say both of those signings could be grade A signings if they stay healthy. They lost Tyrann Mathieu, and Cards fans aren't too happy about this, but I tell you what, his grade on slot coverage from a fantasy perspective was not good. So maybe they can get somebody in that slot to do a little better against guys in the slot. They did pick up Mike Glennon, too, to be Sam Bradford's backup. This isn't exciting. I mean, very unsexy quarterbacks here in Arizona. They could be good for the team, and if they could build a good defense and David Johnson gets it going, they could be good for the team, but these are, guys that are probably not going to light up the stat sheet. I do like that they play similar styles, and I've seen that more teams are looking at making sure they're running their backup quarterback plays the same style as their starter, and that just makes sense. But you just see it doesn't happen so often, and the guy goes down, and then the team has to adjust to a new kind of offense, when their backup comes in. So those guys do play similar styles, so that could be a decent signing there with Glennon, but again, very, very unsexy and maybe not good for fantasy. Moving on to the Rams. Wow. So the Rams were a team that we really took advantage of last year, fantasy-wise, with Jared Goff, with Todd Gurley, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and the departed Sammy Watkins. Aside from losing Watkins, which gives you Kupp and Woods there, and I think that's a great duo to start with. Look for them to draft a wide receiver, I think. You've got one of the most capable running backs that we've seen in quite some time that can carry all of the load in Todd Gurley. You've got, a returning offense that's been bolstered by major defensive signings here. To pair with Aaron Donald, they got Ndamukong Suh from Detroit Lions. And then in the secondary, they got Marcus Peters from the Chiefs, and they got Aqib Talib from the Broncos, who has tore out both of his Achilles tendons, but he's a beast. He likes to snatch chains, but he also likes to snatch those balls. I mean, what I'm seeing here is a blueprint similar of what the Colts did when they had Peyton Manning. You've got an offense that can run it up on you, that forces you to throw. You've got a fierce pass rush that may force you to throw into a bad situation, which is a ball-hawking secondary in Peters and Talib. This can be a really nasty team this year. Their linebacker depth kind of left the building a little bit. They traded Quinn and Ogletree, so I think they're vulnerable at that position. They did get Ramik Wilson from the Chiefs, but I give him a grade of probably a C+. So he's going to compete with Corey Littleton and Mark Barron for linebacker duties. That is something to watch, but that defensive line and that secondary is really sick with all those free agency signings, and this team is definitely wanting to make a statement this year. I think Gurley's the #1 player off the board right now for me. I'll take him above Le'Veon Bell, above Zeke. Right now, I'm saying Gurley is the #1 overall pick, and that's not really that much of a stretch when you see what he did all year, and then just at the last 3 out of the last 4 games, just did something that I haven't seen since like LaDainian Tomlinson, which is just crush fantasy with like 40 burgers all over the place. So that's going to be a good one. They also re-signed their John Sullivan, their big boy center, to make some holes for Gurley. So that's definitely a team on the rise fantasy-wise. Love me some Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods next year with Sammy gone. So Let me see. Seahawks. Let's do these guys. The Legion of Boom is gone. Their defense has just been completely decimated. This is a team that could definitely be on the decline. They need to draft a running back really bad. They have Mike Davis from the 49ers. They have Jared McKissick. And I think still Eddie Lacy. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. The departure of Jimmy Graham is going to be felt. They picked up Ed Dixon from the Panthers in free agency at the tight end position. That could be good. There's some potential there. I'd say that's a C+. You know, he's flashed, but I don't think he's the answer to losing a guy like Jimmy Graham. So what else do we have? You've got the departure of Paul Richardson, who you know I love some P-Rich, so that's going to hurt. But they still have Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett, very fantasy-relevant players. Look for Wilson to keep throwing it to Baldwin and Lockett. And look for them to draft a running back, I think, and bring in some more wide receiver depth as well. Jaron Brown did come in to get a little wide receiver depth. So that was Jaron Brown from the Cardinals, not John Brown. But he's a depth player. He's not going to really, go in and take over anything, I don't think. Who's left from the D? I don't really know. They picked up Barkevius Mingo from the Colts. It's hard to grade this guy. I liked him coming into the Colts, but they were so awful last year. I don't think that's a good judge of his talent. But he does only have 9 sacks in 78 career games. I'm going to give that a C+ right now, but he could be better. They did get Tom Johnson, defensive tackle from the Vikings. They also got Brady McDaniels from the Bucks, cornerback. I'm going to give both of those a B as well. Those could be good. But the Seahawks, I'm just worried about their running back situation. They definitely need to bolster that. Jimmy Graham has gone. So, Wilson and Baldwin with a little Lockett sprinkled in will be, good plays going forward. But, if they don't do anything with their running game, then that just bolsters Wilson. That's why he was so great last year, because everybody knew that they weren't going to run the ball, but he ran it all over the place and did his move where he spins out of the sack, and which no one's can figure out how to stop that. So those guys are going to be good. But their defense is not going to be good. They lost a lot of guys. That could also bolster Wilson as well. So, the lack of moves and the losses they've made in defense can only probably help his situation, because he's going to have to keep scoring. 49ers, going to be a really interesting year. Kyle Shanahan's second year. Came over from the Falcons last year. I think he's going to make these guys very fantasy relevant with Jimmy G. Coming back. He had a great 5-game stint there. Looks like they love him. Looks like he's a good fit for the team. They brought in Jerick McKinnon with the loss of Carlos Hyde. He's a smallish back, 195, more like a Jamal Charles in size. He's very versatile. If he stays healthy, I always talk about opportunity, talent, meeting touches, all three of those things merging for a fantasy firestorm. There could be a fantasy firestorm here happening with Jerick McKinnon, with all the opportunity in the world ahead of him and a great offense. But look for them to bring in a running back as well, other than Matt Breida, and I'd be interested to see who goes there, because I don't have a ton of faith in Jerick McKinnon being a 3-down back all year. I don't think they even want him to be a 3-down back. I think he's definitely a 2-down back, but boy, they paid him a lot of money to just be a 2-down back. So somebody could come in there out of the draft and emerge out of nowhere to be very fantasy relevant. So if they get one of the guys I'm going to talk about here in a little while, that could be huge too. They need a tight end. Kittle is not going to cut it there, I don't think. On defense, they added Richard Sherman. He wanted to go to a team that would play the Seahawks twice a year. That was like the most important thing to him. So he negotiated his own contract too. I mean, I don't know what this guy's doing, but he definitely wants to play football, and I think the Niners are excited to have him. But what's not exciting is Reuben Foster, linebacker that they drafted last year. I really wanted the Colts to draft him last year. I'm kind of glad that they didn't draft him and they drafted Malik Hooker, because Foster is in big trouble with the law. saw and was caught with his pants down. So, he might miss some time. That might be bad for their defense, which might be good for their offense. You know, you don't really want great defenses for your fantasy offensive players. You know, if the defense sucks, then that might help your offense a little bit. So that might be good for them, losing Reuben Foster for an extended period of time. I think he might miss at least 4 games. You've got Marquise Goodwin there alongside Pierre Garçon, who was hurt last year. I really look for Marquise Goodwin to make the leap this year. They also lost Taylor Gabriel. Garçon will be very relevant, especially in PPR leagues, because he works up the middle of the field. But Goodwin can seem to do it all. Runs the whole route tree, big on deep plays as well, which can be good in some of these leagues that give you bonuses for big plays. So Marquise Goodwin, definitely somebody I've got my eye on this year to make the leap. We're going to move on to the Bucks. They've got Winston there with Fitz. They re-signed Fitzpatrick, so there's some stability there with their quarterback position. You always want to see that. They re-inked Mike Evans, who had an off year after 2 amazing double touchdown years, but look for him to make a nice comeback this year. They still have Deshaun Jackson, who was a couple hookups away from having a great year. Winston tried to get it to him. A couple times he was open. It just didn't quite get it there. Winston's not super accurate on those lead the route throws. That's why he's so good with Evans, because Evans doesn't really even get that much separation. He just jumps up and wins that battle. If he can hook up with Deshaun Jackson, that could be some definite relevance there. They got Vin Curry and Bear Allen from the Eagles. I would give both of those grades a B, but getting 2 guys that have played together from the same team over, that's so rare on the defensive line for those guys to play together, and they did well for the Eagles last year. So that could be a good sign for the Bucks, and they always like to have a good defensive line and seem to always have a pretty good defensive line, but these are good moves here. They also inked Brett Grimes. I think that's a good call for them. Ryan Jensen from the Ravens is a big pickup for them for the center. They inked him to a huge contract for a center, but I think it's a good call. I think you can't place a price on these long-term linemen. I'd say that's a B+ or A- play. They need a running back bad. They lost Doug Martin. I mean, not that he's done much for him last year, but I think they are going to lose Charles Sims too. So Doug Martin's gone. He went to the Raiders, and I think Charles Sims might lose out here in free agency. And I would be interested to see where Charles Sims goes. I think he's done well when he's been called upon to do so, and he's a do-it-all back. He can catch the ball too, which is becoming more and more important in fantasy. So I want to look and see where he goes. Maybe turn into more of a Tariq Cohen type player that also needs touches. But Evans with Winston, I think, is going to be a great call this year because, he had 2 great years and then a little bit more of a down year last year. He was being drafted in the first and second round, late first, early second round, and definitely didn't live up to that, but he's still a fantastic player. So we want to see what kind of running back situation they get into there. They need to draft somebody. So the Saints are next. This isn't too sexy, but they did get Ben Watson back. And this could be really big for fantasy because Ben Watson is not really talent meets opportunity and touches, just the opportunity and touches. But sometimes just 2 out of the 3 is all you need. And I'm saying he doesn't have talent, and that's really not fair because he catches the football. He's just not a spectacular athlete or run after the catch player. But he could quietly have a really good year this year for the Saints. I remember a few years ago before they let him go in free agency, there was a time when Graham got hurt and he came in and balled out. So that could be big. They still have Brandon Cooks and Michael Thomas. Great wide receivers. I mean, Michael Thomas is going to be worth a late first rounder this year. Brandon Cooks, I would say, depending on your format, still a 3rd-round player. He kind of disappears. Definitely not a PPR guy. It seemed like there for a while it would just go to Kamara or Ingram or Thomas and then just lather, rinse, repeat. And that was so good for fantasy that that most of Bree's throws went to one of those three players. So Breeze is back, and they picked up Tom Savage to back him up. I'd say that's a solid C+ signing. He does play a little bit more upright and can see over the lineman a little bit better than Breeze. But hopefully we won't see him too much. We'll see Breeze. And they got to draft a quarterback. I mean, Breeze is getting old, and he's not going to be there forever. So they need to draft a quarterback. They need to draft a tight end. After what I said about Ben Watson, they definitely want to bring in some depth there. So they brought back Patrick Robinson to pair with Marshawn Lattimore in the secondary. I think that's really, really huge. They got Corey Coleman from the Panthers, who's a C+ B- player, but could, really be better because, they're not going to need him to do a lot with Patrick Robinson and Lattimore shutting things down. So he might be able to really, really shine in that role. And just hats off to Marshawn Lattimore for having probably the best rookie season I've seen in a cornerback since Champ Bailey. So their defense got better last year, and I think it's gonna continue to be good. They inked Okafor to keep him. They got the versatile Jamon Bushrod, offensive lineman. That's a good B signing. They also got Davis from the Jets, linebacker, to give a little bit more depth there, so that could be good. Breeze kind of took a little regression for, his normal. Still had a great year, but, with that defense getting better and with Kamara and Ingram doing so well, he didn't have to do as much. I think he could still do it. They just didn't need him to, and that's not what they want to do now. They want to run the ball. Kamara with, like I said, 3 or 4 more touches a game this year could be huge. I think Ingram's going to stick along for the ride, so this team's going to look very similar to last year, but very exciting for fantasy purposes because, that's just a team that's built really, really right now with a lot of youth to go along with one of the best quarterbacks in the game. The Panthers, I think, is all about, Cam and Christian McCaffrey and Greg Olsen at tight end. I think those are the only players we really need to worry about. Jonathan Stewart is gone, which will give McCaffrey more opportunities. They're going to bring in a running back. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's a small guy, so he's not going to obviously be between the tackles. So they're going to bring in somebody. But I think this will give him a few more touches. And boy, he quietly had an amazing season last year. One of the top 3 seasons for a rookie for touches catching the ball that we've seen in decades. So that guy could really, really blow up next year. But like I said, it's all about Cam, Christian McCaffrey, and Greg Olsen. They did get Jarius Wright from the Vikings to go along with Chris Samuels. And they did get Jeremiah Searles from the Vikings. He's a guard. That's definitely a B+ signing, especially to shore up their offensive line and give Cam a little bit more room to work back there. Big defensive signing. They got Dontari Poe, who I was kind of hoping would go to the Colts, but they got him. He was great last year for the Falcons. He was great for the Chiefs when he played with them. That's an A+ signing. He could plug some holes for you up the middle and stop that run. Also, they kept 57-year-old Julius Peppers. That's an A. I mean, it's Julius Peppers. He's still playing at a huge elite level. So let's move on to the Falcons. Their new offensive coordinator last year, I think, really hurt them, losing Mike Shanahan. I think he was a lot more predictable. But Julio Jones is there, and Sanu is there. I love some Sanu. Mohamed Sanu, I would definitely draft him this year. Might even draft him as like a wide receiver handcuff to Julio. I know that sounds weird, but if Julio gets hurt, Sanu's stock just rises. They lost Taylor Gabriel too. They also picked up Logan Paulson to shore up their line, or to shore up their tight ends. I'm sorry. He's kind of a blocking tight end, and there's no fantasy relevance. I just like saying Logan Paulson because my name is Paul. They also got Brandon Fuson from the 49ers, guard. I think that's a good signing. Justin Bethel from the Cardinals, cornerback and special teams. That's definitely a B plus signing. That'll be good for the Falcons. Maybe he replaces the Gabriel role too a little bit in that scat wide receiver role. Freeman and Coleman are still there, very fantasy relevant, but they need to make some changes this year. The loss of Shanahan, I think, really hurt them last year, like I said. So we're going to move on to the NFC North. The Bears. So, they really want to get Mitch Trubisky going. They brought in Matt Nagy to replace John Fox, and I think that's going to be exciting, especially for Tariq Cohen. And they brought in Allen Robinson from the Jags. That's an A-plus signing. They brought in Trey Burton for tight end from the Eagles, who did great when Zach Ertz was hurt. I think that's an A signing. They brought in Chase Daniel to be a backup to Mitch. He's very young. I give that a B. They brought in Lynch from the 49ers, pass rush specialist, to pair with Vic Fangio, reunite him with Vic Fangio. I'm going to give that a good, B grade too. They inked Sam Echo, linebacker, and that's a good move for them. They got Prince Makamura from the Giants. This guy can get burned, but, in the right system, I think he could do well. So I'm going to give that a B minus. But what they've tried to do here, and they also brought in Taylor Gabriel. So they brought in Gabriel, they brought in Allen Robinson, they brought in Trey Burton. They have Tariq Cohen that they need to give the ball more to. They have Jordan Howard there as a slow and steady wins the race. Not a PPR kind of fantasy guy, but definitely fantasy relevant from a running back perspective. And this team is a team to watch. I hate to say it. The Bears are always so unexciting for me to watch, but that's what's exciting to me. I mean, maybe maybe Matt Nagy and all these acquisitions will wake this team up. And if Mitch Trubisky is who they think he is, and there's a reason why they gave up 3 picks last year to move up 1 slot to get the guy. I was scratching my head last year when they did that, but now that they built all these guys around him, I mean, they really believe in him, so this could be very exciting. Let's move on to the Lions. They lost Eric Ebron. I don't think they're too worried about that, but he went to the Colts. I kind of like it. They got Tololio for tight end from the Falcons. He's more of a blocking guy. They got in Luke Wilson from Seattle as a tight end. I don't think he's a good pairing with Tololio. I don't like what they did here at tight end when they brought in Tololio and Luke Wilson. That's not exciting to me. They need to draft a running back. They should have last year. Abdullah's not the answer to be their number 1 running back. So we definitely want to see what happens there. They brought in Sam Williams for defensive tackle. Big boy. That's a good acquisition, B+. They brought in Freeney from the Pats, linebacker. I think that's a good addition. Let's see. I got a couple more minutes left. And that's it. We want to watch the running back situation there. The Pack, they lost Jordy, but with Aaron Rodgers healthy and the addition of Jimmy Graham, this could be big. Aaron Rodgers is obviously going to be a great pick next year. Devontae Adams, I think his stock rises with the loss of Jordy. Randall Cobb is still there. They will draft another wide receiver. They've got Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones at running back. If one of those guys gets hurt, the other one is a heck of a fantasy player. With both of them, I just never know what to do. They got Muhammad Wilkerson from the Jets, defensive tackle. Great acquisition. Another guy I was hoping the Colts would get. Their secondary sucked last year, and let's just hope it does again. They lost Sam Shields, but that's just good for fantasy. Have time to go over Cousins, and then we'll do rookie running backs next time. So they got Vikings got Kirk Cousins. This could be very exciting for them. They still have Diggs and Thielen. They lost Jarius Wright, so I think Kendall Wright will become their 3rd. And if you saw his Instagram on vacation, geez, this guy's swole. They lost McKinnon, but with Dalvin Cook healthy, I think that's the one we really want to watch for. And then also Kyle Rudolph. Kirk Cousins loves to throw to his tight end. I think Thielen might kind of regress a little bit with the loss of Keenum. I think Rudolph's stock goes up because Kirk Cousins loves throwing through his tight end. And Dalvin Cook is the player to watch here. They also picked up Sheldon Richardson from Seattle. So I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to wrap it up really quick, and we'll talk about rookies next time. But that got through the NFC North, and goodbye, Paulies Sleepers fans.